and get it started. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the first day of Forum at ShortFest. My name is Anna Souza. My pronouns are she, her. I am the Forum producer. I'm really excited to welcome you all. Here on the team, we also have Elizabeth Westwood, who is our Forum coordinator and who has been helping me all week. So I just want to give her a quick shout out too. We are so excited that you're joining us virtually today. We also have one other virtual panel as part of Forum tomorrow morning about shorts distribution happening at the same time, 10 a.m. Pacific. You can also join that one through our website. So please do come back tomorrow virtually. Our in-person activities at Forum, if you're in Palm Springs, are going to start at the Hilton this coming Friday. We have an amazing lineup. All our information is on the website. Registrations are closed for specific events for Ask Me Anything, one-on-ones, and our roundtables, but all of our other panels are open to pass holders while we have space available. So we do encourage you to arrive early to events and enjoy. And now I'm really thrilled just to welcome you all to Strategizing for Success at Festivals. We have a really fantastic group with us today to discuss the do's and don'ts of festival strategy and how to make the most of your festival experience. We're going to have a long conversation, but please do feel free to use the Q&A box to submit any questions. This is at the bottom of your screen. And now, just to kick us all off, I want to hand it over to our fantastic moderator, who is a writer and filmmaker herself and a contributor to No Film School and The Nocturnal. Please welcome Michelle de la Tour.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. I'm Michelle. I'm here to learn alongside you as we dive into the world of film festival strategy, of acceptances of exposure, and yes, potentially of rejection, if I get to throw a question in there about that too. Like Anna said, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A so we can field them, ask our esteemed panelists your questions. Speaking of our esteemed panelists, let's meet them. Here we have on the call, I have Paul Sloop, short films programmer, director of programming at Cleveland International Film Festival, also associated with Film Pittsburgh and Cordillera. Did I say that right? International Film Festival?
Cordillera,
shoot. Should ask about that one. Welcome, Paul.
Hi, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
We've got Rona Edwards, producer at Rona Edwards Productions and Edwards Skerbelis Entertainment. Hi, Rona. Oh, and I meant to ask, Paul, where are you zooming in from today?
I'm actually in Palm Springs.
Nice. Rona, where are you zooming in today? Uh-oh, you're muted. Good thing we checked that now.
Yeah, it's the typical, I think in the dictionary for the last 2 years will be the most used phrase. You're muted. Yep. I am in LA, but will be zooming, not via the computer, but zooming down to Palm Springs right after this.
Nice. Also on our panel today, we've got filmmaker Jennifer Reeder. Jennifer, welcome. And where are you zooming in from?
I'm just outside of Chicago.
Nice. We've got Sandrine Cassidy, Senior Director of Festivals, Distribution, and Talent Development at University of Southern California, USC, School of the Cinematic Arts.
Hi.
Hello. Where are you zooming in from? I'm going to guess LA. But
I'm in Culver City, and I will be not joining in Palm Springs. I wish I could zoom to Palm Springs, but it will be for next year.
Me too. Join you for that. And then we've got Monika Skerbelis, Programming Director for American Pavilion's Emerging Filmmaker Showcase.
Hi.
Welcome.
And I'm from Pasadena, and I'll be headed down to Palm Springs shortly.
Nice. Should have joined you all. It sounds really nice down there.
Where are you, Michelle?
I am in Sun Valley, Idaho.
Oh, well, that's
which
nice.
Which is nice. I have no complaints here. It's quite nice right now. We had a hailstorm the other day, still having our mountain weather. So it is nice most of the time until it decides to be Mountain Weather's town again. So welcome, Paul, Rona, Jennifer, Sandrine, Monika, and all of you virtually joining us today for this. Let's get down to business. I have a couple questions and then we'll get to questions as they come in. So please feel free again, if you're just joining us, the Q&A function is where you're going to want to put your questions. You can say hello in the chat, but we're fielding our questions through the Q&A portion of our Zoom. So I have a rapid fire question, kind of 1 to 2 sentences to get us started, which is, like, what is, and maybe this is too big of a question for 1 to 2 sentences, let's try. Like, what is a film festival, like, strategy? Like, what does it mean to strategize for success? I'm just giving us like a landing pad, like somewhere we're going towards during a conversation. Like, what does a strategy entail? And we can do this popcorn style. You guys can jump in like 1 to 2 sentences. Like, what are we aiming for?
Targeting the right film festivals to get into the film festivals.
That's very succinct.
Yeah,
think
I would say just not only strategizing, but also being prepared when you go and not just go haphazardly. Know who's going to be there, try to meet the people you want to meet, take part in these kinds of educational panels, and also meet your cohort, the other filmmakers. You never know. I've known so many people that go to film festivals with their own film and they're so focused on their own film, they don't get a chance to really meet everyone else. And then there are those that meet everyone else and they end up collaborating with them to great success. So there's a lot, I think, of goals you can have to have a successful film festival experience.
Yeah, I think the summary of a strategy is simply to maximize the opportunities that your short film might present to you. And that's not one thing. There are many factors. As Rona said, it's how to take advantage of the festivals, but when to actually start submitting so you can take a shot at a couple big ones that would really, if you get into a major festival, it'll help you with the strategy, because a lot of us look at what gets in elsewhere, and that means we're automatically going to want to see it. So it's always worth trying that first, but that's just one element of many things. But I think the summary verse is, having a strategy to maximize the opportunities that your short film might be able to bring to you.
So I would like to add to this, educate yourself in the actually the taste of each festival, what sort of programming each festival does. Now with the internet, it's fairly easy to watch selected films from the past. So I would really encourage that. And as you are building your strategy for your film, I usually recommend my filmmakers to actually draw a list of what they need and to build a strategy of the film, but always thinking about also their own particular strategy of what do they need.
Yeah, and I would say that exactly what has just been said, that filmmakers need to understand where their films will fit in, and that there are some very coveted film festivals where your film simply is sort of not a good fit. So figure out what is a good fit for your film or your films, and then backing from there, actually schedule production based on that. Really sort of like figure out your sort of target premiere, but it has to be that has to be a productive decision. And then what has helped me is fostering and maintaining genuine relationships with festival programmers and festival directors.
Can I add one more
Please.
thing to bounce off of what Jennifer was saying? Is you might have a festival that interests you, but as you're doing your research, you figure out it's not a good fit for the particular film that you were putting in festival. You do not have to have a film in festival or be spending $70 to be rejected from a festival to actually benefit from the festival and attend the festival and get some of your needs met. So meeting in a particular community or attending panels. So this is where the strategy is.
Also, I just wanted to add that there are a lot of niche film festivals out there. And, so if you have a film that maybe you have a Jewish character in it, well, submit to some of those Jewish film festivals. Or if you have an LGBTQ character, you might want to submit to some of those film festivals. And so, always take a look at, the niche film festivals as well.
It's interesting that you guys are talking about how to leverage a film festival even if your film is like not involved, right? If it's not accepted. That question actually just came in as we were speaking, which is how do you approach people when your film is not, like, you're participating in the festival experience, but potentially your film is not there? Like what can you use to continue to leverage? Rona, I see your hand ready to go.
I can actually speak to this because I've had students from all over the world, actually. This one particular student I'm thinking of was from Singapore, and her film did not get accepted in the film festival, but it was still in the market, actually, Palm Springs Short Fest. And she went down to Palm Springs anyway. She had her postcards and whatever ready. She went to all the parties and the panels. She met people, and from that, she got a paid internship with somebody in distribution. So I mean, you just don't know. It is. I hate to use the word networking because it actually sounds cold. I find that word now cold. Everyone uses it. You got to network, and that's true. You do. But I think I like what Jennifer said, genuine relationships. I think that's, you're not being phony about it. This particular student was incredibly vivacious, incredibly bold, and she just met as many people as she could, and they liked her because she said it like she was honest about it. And because of that, she met a lot of people. And I've known other filmmakers also that didn't get into festivals, maybe were in the market, as this one question actually states. And they got meetings with a lot of us that were down there. Again, it was a Palm Springs Short Fest, but there were other instances at other festivals as well, Sundance. You just meet people waiting in line for the movie, and you just start talking, because one of the things you have to understand is everyone that's going to a film festival is interested in film. I mean, they are either scholars, they are filmmakers, they are agents and managers, they are executives, they're all programmers, they're all over the place with who attends festivals. But the one thing that's common about it, the commonality, is we all care about film and storytelling. So if you feel that way, then you're going to meet people and probably make some actually lifelong friendships from it if you just hang out and be yourself.
Yeah, I would love to add to what she just said, because I think Rona makes a great point. I've been coming to Palm Springs for 15 years. I want to share this because I know you'll, as a filmmaker, be where I was as a programmer 15 years ago. I've been at Cleveland for 20 years, but I was sort of quiet and behind the scenes. I didn't really meet filmmakers for the first few years. And then I came here, and there's sort of like that imposter thing you have to get over as a filmmaker, because I had to as a programmer. Go up and meeting filmmakers, and I honestly, I think even to this day, sometimes, because I'm just a big film fan, I feel like an imposter sometimes in the business. But I've stuck around for a long time. But you have to get over that, whether it's to put on a show and become an actor yourself, because it does. I have people that I met here in Palm Springs 15 years ago that I still have relationships with today. And that terminology is right. Networking, if you just do it to network, doesn't really work. If you build relationships, which I have relationships with almost everybody that's on this panel from doing this for 20 years. You can do that as a filmmaker. I always say, outside of my wife, who I love and adore, and my children, all my best friends are the filmmakers and colleagues that I work with in this industry. And they're great people. So you have an opportunity to build a lifelong network of friends, really. And it's worth it. So get out there, whether you get into the festival or not, and meet people. Because once we like you, we want to see your work. That's the important thing. You need to be seen. I don't think many of us, we don't compromise because we represent our festivals and doing things for audiences, but you need your films to be seen. That's the first most important thing. And a lot of times having that relationship for sure, you're going to get that. And you'll get the feedback from people who've been doing it for 15, 20, 30 years. And that can be invaluable too. So great points Rona makes, yes.
And you can't be shy about it when you're down at the film festival, because everybody's there for the same reason, to watch movies, talk about movies. And so it's probably a lot easier to, develop a conversation with somebody, at a film festival. Mm-hmm. So I think that, it's great. And also, I know a couple of filmmakers, one filmmaker who wasn't going to go to the Palm Springs Shorts Film Festival because he didn't have his film, in the theater, but we encouraged him to go down there, and he did, and he ended up getting distribution for his film. And so I highly recommend that, just get down there and just say hi to me if you see me.
We are talking a little bit about networking and going down and having conversations with people and having your goals met. We are in an online panel now, and we have had some film festivals that have been online or hybrid or some combination of various ways that we're watching and communicating and talking about films now. How has or how can our strategy change with the kind of new environments that we're in, like knowing that we might be having an online mixer instead of an in-person mixer, knowing that we might be able to meet some people in person, like can we cold email, like what are the things that we should keep in mind in this kind of new and potentially model that's here to stay for some in terms of festivals, online, hybrid, other means I haven't mentioned here, the spaceship of Sundance, those kinds of things. Like how do we leverage those things, or what are some of the challenges we're running into? I think maybe leveraging those things to do those communication, to do that communication and that networking.
I would jump in if nobody. I don't want to hog it, so if anyone else wants to jump in.
Sandrine, I see you too. I just unmuted.
Yeah, I was just going to say that very quickly that I've had people email me before a festival even began that said I'm going to be down there or whatever. And the fact that they emailed me because they saw I was maybe on a panel or was attending or whatever. And I'm always open to meeting filmmakers. So if that, especially in a circumstance like going to a festival, it's a little harder on Zoom, I think. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. I mean, I think we all have to adjust to this new way of doing things. What's great about like Palm Springs and some other festivals is they list industry people. They also list the filmmakers. We get to kind of crossbreed even way before we even come to the festival. We could sort of see what's out there. And so if a filmmaker, you know, I'm thinking of this one particular filmmaker, he was from Barcelona and he emailed me beforehand. And I said, sure, let's meet up. And we met at one of the after parties. It was too noisy. I said, are you in LA at all? You're coming up to LA? Yes. I said, let's have a real lunch. And that's how it began. So yes, you just have to move a little left or a little right to figure out this new way of doing things.
Yeah, I wanted to add a little more on, you know, sometimes preparing ahead of time is key. I think in our days, sometimes we professionals arrive at festivals with a booked up schedule. So, you know, research, who do you want to meet? Is this person attending? Reach out to maybe meet them, or they know that you trying to meet. Also, it's very easy to see someone's picture now online, so try to see what they look like, because maybe you see them in the hallway or you see them at a party and you don't know that they are who you are trying to meet. So I think doing as much research I think is really key. Yeah.
Anyone else open the floor?
Well, with the virtual, when you're talking about the virtual film festivals, I had to pivot with the 2020 and 2021 short films for the Emerging Filmmaker Showcase. And what I loved about it is it gave me an opportunity to have more time with the filmmakers. You know, instead of a 10, 15-minute Q&A, you know, we were online for an hour. And so we really got to, you know, meet the filmmakers, talk to the filmmakers, hear about the films. And so I really think that the virtual part of it, especially with having a live Q&A with all the filmmakers, was really wonderful. And then, you know, I got to meet all these people last month in Cannes when we brought the 2020, 2021, and the 2022 films to the showcase. And so, you know, I just want to say that I'm all for the virtual.
I would add just that watch for what opportunities do exist. Both Cordillera and Cleveland in the all virtual year did online events that were just mixers, creative mixers, where we did a brief Q&A event like this first, but then everybody in attendance got shifted into tables of 4. So we had little private rooms of one of the people that was on the panel with 3 or 4 filmmakers, and it kept switching. And we did that for an extra hour. And in Cleveland, we did something, we didn't even do the Q&A part. We just did an introduction, a brief thing about what our festival is and welcomed everybody. And then you were able to move yourself to a different table. You could see who was at which tables. And I met a lot of filmmakers that way. Thankfully, because there's nothing that replaces the in-person totally. thankfully, many of those I've now met in person in this past year, where we've been able to get some events back in person. But also, there's many of you that are overseas that can't make the trip here, and there's an opportunity to meet virtually that probably wouldn't exist. So definitely make sure to watch for which festivals are doing those kind of events and take advantage of it, because it does make a difference for sure.
I did find myself on this Sundance spaceship, like suddenly sitting next to people in those table meetings, those like virtual dinner tables with people that I would have never, like the festival director, like people I would have never accidentally bumped into, I think, in person, which was fun. They were all having cocktails. So there we were in person, like in, their Zoom space and on the table. We've talked a little bit about like what maybe you might do once you're at a film festival, either on the ground, online, or in a hybrid model. I am curious, when do you start thinking about your film festival strategy? Is it like when you're drafting and like scripting? Is it production? Is it post-production? Is it all of the above? And does it change all of the time? Because that's what happens when we're making films, is often those things change. Like, when should we be asking ourselves these questions about film festival strategy? And can we be flexible enough to let it change and have our goals shift potentially as we create?
I can pick this up. I think you should start thinking about strategy, attending these panels, creating a festival list, being aware of what particular niche there are, and way before you make movies, even just attending festivals to feel it. There's always a film festival around the corner. It doesn't have to be Sundance or anything. You can volunteer also. You can get a feel of what is a festival. And then as you're making a film, you will then know the style of the film that you have or the particular niches. But I think you have to always be ready to reconsider, because making a film is maybe like having children. You want them to be a doctor, but maybe they'll be something else. And so you have to be open and have a plan B and plan A, B, and C. And most likely you will end up in B and C. If you end up in A, that's great, but have that ready too, because you have 2 years, 2 years pretty much to do festivals. And if after 1 year you are finally realizing you need to shift, it's a little late to shift.
Yeah, and you need to make sure that you put film festivals in your budget. That should be one of your first priorities.
Yeah, it's the one thing that gets lost, I think, when we talk to students and stuff. We find that they're just thinking about it once, I'll use an old-fashioned term, once the movie's in the can. That's too late. Especially, you might want to have somebody that could be your right-hand person to help with collecting assets like photos and bios, because especially on short films, it's really hard to get that after you're out of production from these people. They're just on to other things, and especially if you're not really paying them or paying them a lot, they're checked out onto something different. So we always encourage, at least right when you're in pre-production and then in production, make sure you gather all the assets you may need for some publicity and press kits or whatever whatever you're planning to do. So that's very important. And if you don't have that money in the budget of your production, it's eye-opening how expensive it is to not only apply to festivals but going to them. So yeah, it's always eye-opening for people when they do a budget.
I love that Sandrine used your films like a child, because I regularly say, the director is the director, he's the parent. And I never punish the child for the sins of the parent. I say that to say, plan to be a good parent of your child, which means prepare in advance, all the things Rona just said, recognizing that it's really important once you do submit to festivals that somebody is monitoring the emails, the incoming emails and that, and responding, because festivals will get back to you. Someone's providing the assets. And it's way more time consuming than you're probably thinking. So do the homework up front to understand what is it going to take, not only budget wise, but time wise, to manage the communications, the travel plans, the getting the DCPs or the ProRes 422, or, those who really are great parents, send us a link that has, grab whichever one you want. They're right here. Here's, our press kit. Here's these are all things a good parent could do, knowing I'm going to have a child. So I'm going to get the playroom ready. I'm going to have everything set up in the nursery. We're going to have diapers. We're going to have all the things, the analogy is really, really well served here, because there's going to be a lot of work for the parent once the child is quote unquote in the can. So definitely do that work and plan to be a good parent.
And
I love that, Paul.
one last thing, and you are not your child. So also separate when your film is being rejected. We talked a lot with Paul about rejection. Do not take this personally. And when you network, be yourself and talk about yourself. We were talking about networking. It's before you talk about your child. It's horrible parents that talk about their children before they talk about themselves. Enough with that analogy now.
Yeah, I just have to say, it pains me when I have to send out those emails that they're not accepted.
Me too.
That's interesting to hear. Go ahead.
I think about where I want my film to premiere, well before production. And, a lot of that has to do with also figuring out, getting the post-production schedule really tight, because I've learned to not, that it's not optimal to submit a work in progress, even if it feels really close, because there are so many festival programmers who will watch your film once. And so, I think in terms of, if it's, cutting it close to a festival deadline with a work in progress is not really an optimal plan. So, just back that up and make sure that, what you're submitting is a complete film, or at least, a picture locked film with some even temp sound design or music, something like this. I also don't assume, even at this point in sort of my career as a filmmaker, I never assume waivers. I think, and I get asked all the time by young filmmakers, that they are mystified that they weren't granted a waiver, especially for the first time that they're submitting to a film festival. And it's just not the case that, I just think don't ever assume waivers. If I don't assume waivers, then, someone else didn't assume a waiver either. And I agree that labor and that money for festival submissions needs to be worked into the budget. But, I put together a festival strategy, even now when I have distributors and studios behind the work that I'm doing, I come to that table with a plan, not just of sort of it's down to kind of just in the States, East Coast premiere, West Coast premiere, not just North American premiere. Or I think about I think about my German premiere, or I think about my UK premiere, and I really map that out very specifically. So, I just think that that's something that has to be considered during the, pre-production phase.
I actually had a follow-up question about waivers. And so just so for the sake of our audience, we're assuming waivers is where people apply so that they can waive the fee of a film festival application. In terms of, is it that what kind of information do folks who are applying for waivers need? Is there a supplemental cover letter or a supplemental thing that they need to send? And then what can they do if they're if they're denied a waiver for a festival, if that's something that they're trying to do? Because it is a pretty big investment. Once you go through all these fees, you're I want these several festivals I'm submitting to. It is quite a bit of a budget and investment to get your film in the submission process.
Oh, this is a good one for me. because this is what I love to talk about. The perspective, I never begrudge a filmmaker asking for a waiver. Like, it seems like it's the appropriate thing to do. At least ask, but ask with the idea that the odds are really against it, unless there's some significant reason, not because you don't have money. That's a really bad reason to say. And particularly to say you don't have it because you've already spent it. This is the one thing to never include in your email, is that we've already spent our submission budget, but we'd like to apply to your festival. That's like saying you are so far down on our list, but if you'd like to see, go out with us, we'd be interested now. Just leave that out. Don't use that. Even if that's true, don't use that as the line. Again, I never punish the child for the parent. So that's never a knock for me, but I have been on panels where it's like, don't ever do that. Because to us, it's like, yeah, okay, this filmmaker's not taking this seriously. So don't do that. Be prepared to accept the no. And especially if you want to get into that festival, be prepared still to pay. And recognize that different festivals have different rules associated with those. There are some of the bigger festivals that are not going to waive their fees no matter what. The policy at all of my festivals is, if once you're an alum, once you've had any film in there, we don't ever ask you for a fee again. You get an alum waiver at every one of them. You now have a relationship. We are now dating for life, so to speak. So I'm never going to ask you to pay me anymore. We know we like your work. We always want to see it. It doesn't mean it's going to get in, but we definitely want the opportunity to see and consider your work, and we don't want that to cost you money. I think that's fairly common from several of the programmers I know. But if you've never had a film play that festival, to not only ask but expect to get a waiver is a little too presumptive. So I just wouldn't do that. But it's okay to ask, for sure. A lot of times when I have it available and there's a reason like, hey, my film premiered at Tribeca or my film premiered at Sundance, would you be interested? While I may not offer a waiver, I will offer a 50% discount or something like that, because you do have a credible reason for us to want to see and be able to consider your film. Just be prepared for the answer. And again, don't, take rejection personally.
Completely agree with Paul on that. We don't give waivers, but what I might do, depending on the reasoning, is if we're in a late deadline, I'll bump you back to a regular deadline. So you'll get a little bit. You might get a little bit of a discount depending on the reasoning and where we're at with the submission process.
I also want to add that there are a lot of free festivals or very cheap festivals in Europe in particular. So do your research. If money is an issue, it should be part of your strategy. We were talking about the strategy. So in your strategy, you have a budget, you decide who is important enough that you are going to submit with or without a waiver. And then you go down your list of priorities, and there are some very, very legit and great festivals that are free. So, or $5 or euros, so this is definitely part of the strategy.
There's a European platform, submission platform called Short Film Depot, and that's something that you should check out.
Paul, you mentioned something that was also a question here, and I just wanted to follow up, which is if your film has been accepted to other film festivals, is that part of the consideration during the submission and acceptance process?
I think I know from my perspective and several of the colleagues I work with, we're certainly shopping and looking at those films already. I'm always looking at what Sharon and Ben are playing at Tribeca and what the Sundance team is playing. And there were several other, Greg with Indie Shorts, which is the Shorts platform for Heartland. When they splintered, we're always looking at each other's lists. There's a lot of festivals we're automatically looking at. Again, doesn't mean we're going to offer full waivers to those, but we often will offer discounts because we really want to be able to consider the films. And in many of those cases, you won't even get the opportunity to reach out and ask, because we'll already be reaching out to you. I send a lot of emails out if you've been in one of those festivals, already asking you to consider submitting your film and offering you a discounted rate and stuff like that, trying to get to you before our rates go up, so that coupon is more valuable early than it is late. just like Monika mentioned, if you're at the end, all it's going to do is take you back to the beginning. But if you're submitting at the beginning at 50%, it's, $10, $15 sometimes, which is cost effective comparatively. But yeah, so that's how other festivals come into play. That can differ from one program and one festival to another. So I can't speak for everybody, but I do have quite a few colleagues that we love what we do. So we're always looking. We're not waiting for stuff to fall in our laps. And in those cases, that is valuable information, but usually we already know it.
I would add to that too, that programmers talk to each other. So it's kind of this like closed, it's like a company town, but of programmers, right? And I remember hearing from, I think it was Sharon at Tribeca, says, if it's not right for my festival, I might call Paul and say, hey, this is really good. You should take a look at it. But it's not right. I can't fit it into my program, but maybe you can. And so people are, programmers talk to each other. That's what I want everyone to know. And they come to festivals like Palm Springs because of the film market. So they get to see not just what's in the festival, but beyond. If they're looking for sidebar, niche things that a lot of festivals will have, or something specific for their festival lineup. So
I wanted to, can I add something? I have a lot of my filmmakers. I don't know if it's not a COVID thing, but it's happened even more during COVID, that are contacting me and asking me how can they pull from all these festivals, because they've applied to all these festivals before they had a strategy and they were accepted, but now maybe they want to wait to see if Tribeca will take them or another festival will take them. I will never ever take that call and recommend them on how to pull. This is not a practice that you should get into. You could maybe pull before they consider you, if they are still accepting submissions, but you will also lose your submission entry, but this is really not a good practice. It is very difficult to program a festival. There's a lot of thought process that goes in it, whether they are a small festival or a big festival. And yeah, I just wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Nice, thank you. There's a question that's come in, and I'm actually going to pull. I know that I was speaking offline with Jennifer about this a little bit, but I'm also going to throw it to the floor too about this idea about cover letters with submissions. Like, should people be submitting cover letters? Is that something that they should be doing or not be doing? Doesn't matter. If they have the opportunity to submit a cover letter. And I know, Jennifer, if you want to chime in, now is the time to do so on your end, because I actually want to hear from your end, like as the filmmaker side. There's like a filmmaker side and there's like the programming side. And so I'm curious.
I mean, I've never submitted a cover letter. I mean, maybe not since like online submissions. I mean, maybe I did a million years ago when I was sending DVDs or something like that, but I don't even know that there's necessarily a place to put a cover letter, or maybe there is and I've just missed it, but I've not ever written a cover letter. And I feel like I've had a pretty good success with film festivals. What I have done, however, is, if in like afterwards, if I have access to like the industry booklets or industry information, and there's information in there, contact information for festival directors, or certainly programmers, or even writers, etc., that I didn't meet at the festival for one reason or another, I usually would follow up with an email, very open-ended, that would just say like, I'm sorry that we didn't meet at the festival and I had a film there and I'm not sure if you saw it, but here's the, here is the link, and, etc. And again, I mean, and I'm reaching out to people whose festivals I can imagine, I can see the film being in, and so, that's sort of like a retroactive, kind of cover letter. And so I've definitely, I've done that, but I've not submitted. I mean, sometimes if I put in a formal submission, which I still always do. That's another thing too. Like I never I submit by the deadline. There's not a world in which I would assume that any programmer would watch my film if I hadn't formally submitted the film. I mean, I just do that. And so, but it's definitely the case that I would, for instance, formally submit the film, and then, obviously with programmers that I have a good relationship with, I would follow up with an email just to say, like, heads up, I submitted my film, because I also understand that there's layers of watchers that maybe watch a film before it gets to the primary programmer. And I know my own films, like if someone's watching the first 3 minutes of one of my films, they might, and they don't know that it's me necessarily, they might not, like move it forward. And, so, and I never assume that primary programmer or programming team will watch the film, but it has a better chance from my perspective to say, heads up, the film's been submitted. Here's the number. Here's a link just in case you want to sort of like not, dig through the platform, et cetera. So I guess that's, maybe a different kind of cover letter, but that's just from how I've used sort of additional, let's say, documented contact info.
Film Freeway has a cover letter section, and I do read it. I read everything that's on Film Freeway, and I think it's good to utilize the cover letter if you have something that you want to share. Like, for instance, maybe your cast or you went to school in that town that you're submitting to, or you have a connection somehow with the programming director. I think that it's good to utilize the cover letter, but you don't want to use the cover letter in Film Freeway to just rehash your log line or, what we can already read, in your director's statement, which I also think that, if you're going to utilize Film Freeway, fill it all out, like put in all the information, put your director's statement in there, because it's always interesting to know what inspired you to make your film. And, when I get down to, putting the program together, and, I've got, is it this film or this film? Sometimes, reading all of the stuff on Film Freeway and looking at, you can put all your social media links in there as well, and to just go down and just look at everything, it's really, it's helpful. It's helpful for me as a programmer.
Yeah, Jennifer, everything Jennifer said is like a master class in how to deal with festivals. I kid you not. That's best practices 101, everything she said, because all of my favorite alum filmmakers and filmmakers work with do exactly the things she said. If they already know me, they still submit, they get an alum code. I ask them, please don't, just send me an email saying you have a new film. I'm going to get you the code. And then they say, thank you, I have submitted. Here's the tracking number. And here's a link for you, Paul, so you can watch it without having to go in there. That's just incredible. Those are the right steps to take to put you at the top. It's not going to keep you from getting in if you don't do those things. I'm just saying those are masterclass answers. To add on to what Monika said, to make it very specific, put everything that is universally relevant that might make it a bit more interesting in the director's statement. And then only include in the cover letter, other than just the, kind greeting or whatever, anything that would be relevant to that specific festival. It was perfect. If your producer grew up in Cleveland, that's probably valuable to put, because we definitely give special attention to artists who Cleveland is home, if it's the Cleveland Festival, or Pittsburgh for Pittsburgh, or Reno, Tahoe for that. So in your cover letter, put that. Having said that, most of the programmers I know and work with do this the same way. We don't read any of that stuff before we watch the film. And if it isn't already still very alive for us, it's not going to change anybody's opinion. What it can do is, if I already like the film and it's in the running, and then I read your director's statement and see there's a really personal story to it that you might come and talk about in the Q&A, it pluses it up. It can't fix the film, but it can plus it up. So always think the cover letter and the director's statement is there to plus up your work if they like it, to give them more reasons. It's like the car companies that run the ads. They know you bought, they're actually just wanting to confirm what you already feel. like, oh, look, Matthew McConaughey's driving the same car that you just bought. Isn't that great? You know, think of that. Your director's statement should just plus up what we already like from just watching the film.
Awesome. I confess that that silence partially was me taking my own notes. Like, oh yes, I should email that person. Oh yes, I should be doing that thing. So thank you for giving us all some follow-ups and some advice here. We've got a couple more questions here that I want to get to while we're here. If we're waiting for the time to submit your question, now's the time to do so in that Q&A function. There are a couple that I'm gonna pull out now for us to answer, for you guys to answer together. There were actually, I think, Jennifer, you mentioned premieres when you were discussing your strategy in terms of like what might be like a European premiere or something else. I think that was you. So there's a question here about premieres in terms of how much weight should we consider in terms of premieres? Like how much does your festival strategy change if you're thinking about premieres or if you're thinking about a short premiere versus like a feature film premiere? This question could probably go for everybody, but I think it was Jennifer that was talking about premieres a little bit ago.
Well, I mean, I know there are some film festivals that require the premiere, you know, so just know that there are that which festivals require a premiere. Sundance doesn't, you know, I mean, at least for the shorts. And you know, that's obviously like a big coveted fest. And so they'll screen something that's screened someplace else. Berlin won't, you know, and you know, probably Rotterdam won't. Oberhausen requires, they used to require a German premiere. Now they require an international premiere. I mean, it's really, and they're tough, you know, I mean, that's hard and fast. You know, there are other festivals that don't require any kind of premiere at all, you know, for the kind of region within Scotland or any of those things. So, you know, and for me, it's been really important, you know, for both my shorts and my features that it launches out of, you know, not always my first choice, but, you know, one of my top 3 choices. And I feel really fortunate in the sense that that usually happens. That's also not to say that I haven't had, you know, festivals that I've screened in over and over and over again, and then I make a film that they don't take, you know, and that's still kind of a bummer. But I also understand that that's how it is, and I never fire off an angry email also, but which I know festival programmers get, you know, they've certainly, you all have been on the receiving end of some probably not so gracious, you know, missives from bummed out filmmakers. But yeah, for me, the you know, launching out of a festival that I have targeted feels you know, really important for the life of that festival, you know, or for the life of that film, you know, especially for short films. You know, European festivals were mentioned, and I've had so much success at European film festivals. My films have screened way more outside of the US than in the US. Which is fine, you know, that doesn't make me a less successful American filmmaker. You know, but I think that yeah, I mean, for me, the short films in particular, you know, I mean, in the States, you know, that their life depends on a you know, a kind of a festival tour on some level, you know. I mean, Europe is slightly different. I mean, I've had a lot of my films end up you know, on like broadcasted, or, you know, I mean, and it has like, they can have a different life, but you know, for me, a festival premiere kind of map is like my Bible, and it's you know, it's what drives me, you know, to make the most excellent films that I can.
I think one of the important notes about premiere status is to do the homework. Again, your strategy, do the homework and know what Jennifer just talked about, that what festivals does it matter? So it does not matter other than the city that I'm in for the 3 festivals that I have. And the one that's most significant with is Cleveland, because it's Oscar qualifying in all 3 categories. And yet that's not a thing for us, which ends up being good news for the filmmakers who submit to both us and Tribeca because we sit so close to each other. I happen right before Tribeca, usually within 2 or 3 weeks. Now that they've moved to June, it's a little further away. But for years, there's been 3 or 4 films. You know, we pick excellent films, but we play 2.5 to 3 times the number of short films that Tribeca does. So the odds are better getting into Cleveland, but it's extraordinary to get in Tribeca. They play about 60 short films a year. So that's an extraordinary opportunity. So in my case, because it's a fan festival in Cleveland, where the people just come out because they love short films, and they're not going to know the film anymore a year from now than they did now. And if I love it that much, we just, you know, when we get the emails that it shouldn't go this way, as has been said, if you submit it to us and you get the message from Tribeca and Sharon saying, we'll play your film as long as you give us world premiere status, you should withdraw from my festival immediately. Unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. I then accept the film and within a couple of days get the email saying, I'm sorry, we can't play because we got into Tribeca. And again, I never punished the child. We have always played that film the next year. And what a great year to open at Tribeca and a year later play Cleveland. That's a really successful festival run because they're both Oscar qualifying and guaranteed good things are going to happen in between. But know that in advance and you can avoid those faux pas, so to speak, by making sure you understand which festivals are going to require what kind of premiere status.
Yeah, I don't require a premiere status with the emerging showcase, but I've hit the same situation with Tribeca last year and the year before, and it's only seems to be Tribeca that I'm always up against. But it's fine, it's good because you know we don't deal with the premiere status, don't need that, and so I've got this one great film that I'm looking forward to screening it next year.
I would also add to that, it's really important, as Paul said, to do your homework. Festivals all have websites. They give the guidelines of what's required. Don't, you should go to it. You should make notes. You can create an Excel file of months and, through the year, what's happening where, what are your target festivals, what requires a premiere, what doesn't, and so forth. And then from that, you can whittle it down to your festival strategy, basically.
There have been a couple of strategies and suggestions here that rely on connections, or maybe you've been to a festival before. What if you're a first-time filmmaker or student that's like coming into this for the first time ever, they're their first project potentially? What advice might you give them about their strategies for submissions and success, or how they can best kind of make themselves successful in this process if they are brand new to the process? Potentially doing the homework sounds like is a very common theme. But what other suggestions might you give to first-time filmmakers who are in this process?
I can say really quickly that something that I've done in the past several years is if I've been mentoring some younger filmmakers, or I've got some, I'm an educator, I have students, and oftentimes if there's a film that I really like and I know it's someone's first film that they're submitting to a festival that I'm an alum of, sometimes I believe in the film that they've made, sometimes I will let that student know, or let that first time filmmaker know that do everything the right way, submit on time, pay the fee. And then oftentimes I will reach out to the programmer and just say, heads up, there's this film that's coming your way that I think is really special. And I don't know that necessarily makes a difference, but I think there could be, if there's a first-time filmmaker who, is in a program, with a professor who is an alum, they could ask that, if they would watch their film and if it seems like, the right fit for that festival. That's not always a given. I've definitely been sent films as an ask to kind of nudge a programmer, and a film that I know is not at all right for that festival. And that's I'll say, go ahead and, you should submit to that festival, but I'm not sure that this is the right one for you. But here's where I think it could fit, and I'll give them sort of suggestions of other places. And so, that's a little bit of like a circumventing the space. But if a first-time filmmaker has a relationship with, an alum of a festival, then, using that kind of, sort of, I don't know, your festival ally, alum ally, could be one, could be one way to do it.
That's so great, Jennifer. I absolutely, I do the same thing too. With the filmmakers from USC, I think, talk to your peers. They can, even at a festival, you maybe want to focus on meeting what we call the industry and the programmers. Talk to other filmmakers. They've been in the process, or they will be with you. They will tell you they just went to this festival and it was amazing. Like you're in it together. Usually you will keep bumping each other throughout this couple years. And you build friendships also amongst filmmakers. Jennifer, has done it for some of her peers. And so this is definitely something that makes you stronger, for sure.
Sandrine, we have a great shared story, Sandrine and I, from just exactly that process. Sandrine, I'm one of the programmers who gets Sandrine's recommendations because I beg her for them, and developed a relationship with a filmmaker years ago who ended up winning an Oscar. And it all started with her recommending one of her USC films called Mataran. We played that film. That was the first, and she came to the festival. A couple years later, she had another film that she had a couple films that year, and we ended up playing both of them, one of which this filmmaker I'm talking about didn't care for herself, but Sandrine said, "Can you watch this and tell me what you think?" And I loved it. We played it at several festivals. But then her first film out of USC was Period, End of Sentence, which she world premiered with us in Cleveland, and it went on to win the Oscar after winning our Oscar qualifying award. And that relationship started because Sandrine recommended her student film Mataran, and I got to know Rika, and we got to see her work as an alum moving forward. So you never know where those relationship-based things can lead. It doesn't get your film in. It just makes sure that key people will take a look at it, and that's very helpful.
And full circle, her latest film is playing at Palm Springs.
I would also add to that for new filmmakers, for any filmmaker really, what do you want to get out of the festival? What do you want to get out of the journey of going on the festival circuit? And there's many reasons, by the way, and there's many reasons why you choose this festival over that festival. Oscar qualifying, if that's something that interests you and you think your film is, realistically of the caliber of those films that tend to win. But even that, you never know why something's winning. Is it the top tier festivals? Is it the networking? Is it the local festivals? Or it could also be a destination film festival. Like, oh, I've always wanted to go to Portugal. I think I'll just apply, and if that will be my sign, if I get accepted, I'll get to go to Portugal. That it could just be that even. So you have to ask yourself as a new filmmaker, but I don't think it matters if you're new or not. What do I want to get out of this? Do I want to meet more people? Do I want to network with industry, executives? If you want to go with Hollywood executives, you're going to go to a certain kind of festival. If you want to meet other, filmmakers, there are other festivals that do that trick. So do I want to go to, overseas? All of those questions you can answer, and they may be yes to all of the above, but maybe hone in a little bit as a first-time filmmaker, especially, and say, these are my goals. Show my film, get it accepted. Maybe I'll win some awards, but I want to network, and I want to also talk to people about the next film I have in mind, or something like that. Think about your goals, and then that will help you decide which festivals are your A list versus your B list, and so forth.
Well, thank you, panelists, for helping all of us thinking about our goals. And for those of you who submitted questions, thanks for letting us consider your own goals. I'm mindful of our wrap-up time here, so I'm going to throw it, I think, to Anna here to wrap us up.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Michelle, Rona, Jennifer, Sandrine, Monika, Paul. We really appreciate your time and your expertise, and we're so thankful for you participating in the panel today. Thank you, Michelle, for a wonderful job moderating. Thank you to all the attendees and all the questions that have been coming in, all the thoughtfulness around those. And thank you to everyone for making this a great first forum event. Please join us again virtually tomorrow and in person starting Friday. and have a great rest of your week at the forum and the festival. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. See you
Thanks.
guys down in
Take care,
Palm
everybody.
Springs.
Be safe.
I'm over there.
Nice to
Have
see
fun in
you.
the sun. I'm so jealous.
Join us.
I should. Yes. Now that I can.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Nice to see you, Sandrine.